It is the Banner Baseball live chat. Good evening from wherever you are watching. Paul Mancano and Andy Kostka here with breaking news that was just reported on the BaltimoreBanner.com by Andy Kostka and Danielle Allentuck that a sale of the Baltimore Orioles is imminent. You can read all of this on the BaltimoreBanner.com, or you can subscribe $1 for 6 months for the full details. Andy and I are going to break down as much of it as we can right here. We're going to take your questions, your comments. But the news as of right now, John Angelos has agreed to sell the team to a group led by Baltimore native and billionaire David Rubenstein. This group also includes Orioles legend Cal Ripken Jr. The deal values the team at $1.725 billion. Rubenstein is going to become the quote-unquote control person, and Michael Arrighetti will also be part of the investment group. Andy, wow, what a bombshell. Not at all what we expected, especially little less than a month. A little more than a month, I should say, after the Orioles signed a brand new lease at Oriole Park at Camden Yards to keep the team at the ballpark for as much as 30 or more years. And here, John Angelos has agreed to sell the team to David Rubenstein and company.
Yeah, I mean, it comes as honestly a little bit of a surprise. John Orand from Puck News broke the news first. Luckily Pam Wood was also involved in this for the Banner, confirming the belief from Rubenstein that he has a deal with the Angelos family, with John Angelos in particular. We also know that Cal Ripken Jr., you know who he is. I was going to explain who he is. I think he is.
I think you know who he is. Yeah.
Cal Ripken is involved in the group as well that is leading this. I always preach caution. It's really important to remember that this is not finalized yet. Because the MLB owners have to approve any sale of a team. There is a meeting next week, the annual owners meeting in Orlando. We'll see if it makes the agenda for that. It could honestly be too fast of a turnaround to have official details and stuff ready for next week, but we'll see. There's so many unknowns because there's still the MASN deal to parse through. There's the development rights. There's who else is involved in this venture. It's a lot. It's exciting, of course, for Orioles fans, I imagine, right now, but it's at the same time there has to be approved by MLB before anything is official.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because they do have their meeting, like you said, next week in Orlando, and we don't know exactly how quick the turnaround is for them to get the item on the agenda for it to be voted on, but it will have to be approved. It's going to be fascinating to see how this unfolds over the next week. And a little bit of background, you wrote about it on the BaltimoreBanner.com, but for those who don't know, Peter Angelos, he's 94 years old. He's owned a majority of stake in the Orioles since 1993. But John Angelos, who is agreeing to sell the team, has been designated as the quote-unquote control person because of Peter's declining, because of his age and because of his declining health. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of levels of approval that need to go through before anything is finalized. But the biggest part of it perhaps could be the fact that David Rubenstein has agreed to buy the team and that John Angelos has agreed to sell. And this is something that we were not expecting because John Angelos assured, according to your reporting, Andy, and according to Pamela Wood's reporting, John Angelos did assure the Maryland governor, Wes Moore, that he was going to not sell the team. He was going to maintain ownership of the team. And it appears that that is not true.
Yeah, and I see a question about control person. The control person aspect, we don't know the full details of what this entire agreement involves. I mean, John Orand originally, reported in, the 40% stake initially with, rise for, a path to full ownership for Rubenstein. The fact that he's a control person really basically means he gets the decision making power when it comes to MLB. So that's the role that John Angelos has right now as the designated control person, because Peter Angelos is ill and has been ill for a few years now, unfortunately. So it definitely means this is David Rubenstein's. We don't know the exact timeline of when this gets finalized, but David Rubenstein gets a lot of power in terms of um, being the control person with MLB. He can vote on things with the league. He can probably have more say in terms of be it development, stadium upgrades, things of that nature. But we kind of have to wait and see as things shake out a little bit more what the development rights situation looks like. And obviously they're staying in Baltimore, so there's no need for I don't know if any Orioles fans have ever worried about that, but um, I apologize for the Slack dings in the background.
You've got a lot going on.
Yeah, but we don't know technically how how it might look in terms of um, the breakdown, or how quickly this actually is approved. We'll see.
Yeah, we're going to bring in Danielle Allentuck as well in just a minute. But yeah, so many questions that are still swirling right now. And as Andy tries to scarf down his dinner, uh, we are reporting through the late hours of the night, I'm sure, tonight. So we're not prepared to get any sleep anytime soon. But essentially, a lot of questions still up in the air right now when it comes to the Orioles and what this sale means for the team. Obviously, the control of the Mid Atlantic Sports Network and MASN is a big, big question mark right now, because whether the Orioles will maintain control with David Rubenstein and company in tow, that is yet to be determined. That is a network that also has broadcasting rights for the Washington Nationals, and we've certainly seen that development and that network hold up the potential sale of that franchise. And it, for a long time, has been held over the Washington Nationals and the future of that team. We don't know yet what the future of MASN is going to be if it is folded into this deal. We also don't know the future of the land development rights around Camden Yards, as I'm seeing some questions with that as well. We know that John Angelo sought to have a 99-year land grant for the area around Camden Yards, areas that included the warehouse and surrounding areas, the parking lots between Camden Yards and M&T Bank Stadium. He was hoping to get that land in order to develop it and turn it into a live, work, play 365. He was not able to do that. Now, there are some stipulations in the new lease that allow him and allow the new owner, I guess, at this point, to acquire that land. And that was certainly a reason why he pushed for it, because the control of that land is a major selling point and a major asset. But we don't yet know exactly where that land grant is going to be uh, folded in, if folded in, to this Orioles sale.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting perspective, Paul. To bring in, and that's something we'll hopefully learn more in the coming days or hours, minutes. Who
Yeah.
knows? Um, but yeah, I mean, it is of note that Rubenstein will be, as the control person, will be in charge of decision making for the team once the deal is approved. That generally refers to the team itself. It will be interesting whether if the lease I assume gets transferred completely. I mean, there's a clause in the lease when it was signed that this lease binds a new owner as well. So there was protection in the lease for this. Kind of, just have in the back pocket, even though John Angelos had told the governor he was not planning to sell. So there is the lease will transfer over, but the development rights that you were discussing, the Orioles have 4 years to come up with a plan and have that plan approved by the state of Maryland. So will be interesting to see what the kind of timeline and process is on that. And depending on, it's no secret as well. I mean, this is just reading the tea leaves, but before David Rubenstein was, before he ended up getting this deal. He hitched aboard Ted Leonsis' push for to buy the Nationals, and you have to remember that Ted Leonsis owns Monumental Sports Network. Maybe if Ted Leonsis, we don't to answer. I don't know if he's involved, but I'm just compared because they were in discussions about the Nats at one point. That has been previously reported, I think maybe by Sportico. I think reported that about 2 years ago, which is an interesting wrinkle. And if Ted ends up having ownership of the Nationals, again, we don't know. But if Ted owns the Nationals, it could actually be an easier. It could be easier to figure out the MASN conundrum if you have two owners who are willing to work together and have already have a little bit of a relationship. Again, that's tea leaves.
Yeah.
Nothing firm on that. That is just kind of projecting what could happen in the future.
And that MASN deal is in perpetuity. I mean, part of the reason that it has been in such a stalemate for the last several years, about a decade plus now, is because that deal is in perpetuity. And essentially, the Nationals can only get as much as 33% ownership of that. It's one of maybe the only deal in all of professional sports where a professional team has control of the broadcast rights for another team.
Mm-hmm.
So a bizarre situation that we have yet to see unfold. Well, I teased her, so I should bring her in. Danielle Allentuck, also of the Baltimore Banner, joins us now. And Danielle, just had you on a live chat mere hours ago to discuss the state of this roster, of this Orioles roster going forward. And I think one point that we continue to harp on was the fact that the Orioles were not spending the money necessary to get themselves from reigning AL East champions into true World Series contender range. They still have yet to invest in a free agent starting pitcher. They still have yet to invest in some of the necessary upgrades that a major league roster that is hoping to compete for a World Series needs. And I think part of the reason the Orioles fans in our chat and across social media are freaking out, are celebrating, is because they feel like at least David Rubenstein and company, a group that includes Cal Ripken Jr. and others, could be the necessary change to try to facilitate some more spending on the Orioles' part.
Yeah, I mean, we have no idea what's going to change, if it's going to change. But I mean, you can look at past history. You can look at, when Steve Cohen came in to buy the Mets, and obviously he's a little bit more money than Rubenstein does, but he came in and he spent a ton of money right away improving that team. He didn't translate right away to success, but I think fans are hopeful that something like that could come. I mean, the Angelos family has been known to be very cheap. And that they have not been willing to spend the big money on long-term contracts, on extending some of their young guys. I mean, all we hear about from fans is Gunnar Henderson and Ali Rushman. They want to be extended. They want them to be able to, be an Oriole for a long time. And maybe this new ownership will be the group of people to do it.
Yeah, we have no idea. We have yet to hear from David Rubenstein. We have yet to hear even the details as to exactly how the sale is going to go down. But people see the grass being greener, I think you could say, on the other side, because we have seen this ownership group under John Angelos as the control person not give out multi-year contracts, at least since Mike Elias has taken over, not guaranteed multi-year contracts. And we have yet to see them. They've invested as much as possible into the player development side, into Mike Elias and his staff, but they have yet to invest in free agents. And I think that is one area that I think we could definitely see a new ownership group make a change in that way. Just to recap exactly where we are right now as we stand, the John Angelos, for those who are tuning in live, John Angelos has agreed to sell the Baltimore Orioles to a group that is led by Baltimore native billionaire David Rubenstein. Andy Kostka, Danielle Allentuck, Pamela Wood, all doing great reporting on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. David Rubenstein would be the control person, and New York businessman Michael Arrighetti would also be part of this investment group, as well as Orioles legend Cal Ripken Jr. We are also joined now by Orioles and sports columnist in general, Kyle Goon, to discuss this news. Look at this. All four of us here to discuss this insane breaking news. We thought our day was done at approximately 5 or 6 o'clock, and yet we are brought into this madness. And yes, for those commenting, that is the Baltimore Banner Sports Slack going absolutely berserk in the background. And yes, Andy Kostka is wolfing down a turkey sandwich for dinner. But Kyle, because you are the newest to this group, let's get your thoughts on all of this. You just published a column on the BaltimoreBanner.com about what you would like to see from a new ownership group. What were some of the things that you listed as wish list items?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of go off of what Danielle was just talking about, I mean, the perception that this franchise is cheap kind of looms over everything. It looms over every contract discussion, every free agency. As we talk about the possibility that young guys could get signed to long-term extensions, like they've done in Atlanta, like they've done in Seattle. The Orioles still haven't done it, and I think to some extent it's John Angelos' comments to the New York Times this summer always kind of clouds that picture. We don't really know what Mike Elias is empowered to do or not to do. And the Orioles have annually one of the lowest payrolls in baseball, especially during this Elias era, and they just have not meaningfully added to it. So I think, yeah, just a lot of things. I mean, first of all, start with Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde. What are their contracts? Can we extend them? And can you, more importantly, tell the world that they're being extended, that, hey, these guys have seen this rebuild through. They're going to be in Baltimore for a long time. We don't currently know the length of Mike Elias' contract or Brandon Hyde's contract. And I think it would be a big relief for starters to just say, hey, we've extended them and we're keeping them in Baltimore.
Yeah, and there has been, under both Peter Angelos and John Angelos, there have been several managerial changes. There's been several changes in philosophy and general manager. I mean, I think back to, the days when Peter Angelos was still in control of the franchise. I know he still is, has the monetary control right now, but John Angelos is the control person. And Davey Johnson wins manager of the year and is also relieved of his duties at the same time because there were disagreements between ownership and between Davey Johnson, the manager. Times have changed. It appears right now that Brandon Hyde is at least going to manage this team for the foreseeable future. He did just win AL Manager of the Year, but there have been numerous changes in philosophy. There have been numerous changes in payroll fluctuation, but there has been a steady trend now since John Angelos has taken over as the control person, and especially since the hiring of Mike Elias. There has been a steady decline in payroll. It is not close to the upper echelon of Major League Baseball. It's not close to.
It's closer to it's almost the bottom. Yeah. The only team right now, and listen, the Orioles have to finish arbitration. They have to kind of negotiate deals for Austin Hayes and a few other guys that is going to add to their payroll, but they're right at the bottom. The only team that's below them is the Athletics, who are just. They've given up all hope on anything, right?
Yeah, so it's trying to be sold.
It's not good company to be in. And it doesn't jive that the Orioles are a 101 win team, a defending AL East champion, and they're trying to win now, but they will not meaningfully add to their payroll. And, it's hard to tell exactly without being in negotiations for starting pitchers or being in free agency meetings exactly why that signing or that trade hasn't happened yet. But I think a lot of people think, and I would be interested to see what happens if Mike Elias gets new ownership that empowers him to add to the payroll and be closer to the middle than the bottom. Would he be more dynamic? Would he make some more moves? Would he take this stash of prospects that is now beginning to back up and use them to acquire starting pitching, which everyone in the world knows this team needs? So I think it's just a matter of not being at the bottom. I mean, I don't think that this new ownership group is going to make them, the Yankees or the Dodgers. But I don't think anyone expects that or even needs that to happen.
You're right.
I think what fans might be really excited about is just knowing that he is from Baltimore. He's a baseball lover. He played Little League growing up. You know, what he said, one of his saddest moments was when his baseball card collection got thrown away when he went to college. So at least fans know that the new owner does love baseball. He has a Baltimore history. So he may be more willing than, you know, some other random owner coming into town just because he wants to own a sports team to actually invest in this city, just given his history here and his history of baseball.
Yeah, and that was actually a big back in 1993. 30 years ago, that was a big selling point for why Peter Angelos was going to be a positive change for the Orioles because he guaranteed that the Orioles were going to stay in Baltimore. And
Right.
so I think one thing that Orioles fans were desperate to see, I know that a lot of them wanted to see a change in ownership because they wanted to see this team go into hands that were more willing to spend. But more than anything, they wanted to see this team stay in Baltimore. The new lease guaranteed that this team is going to stay here for the long term. But putting the franchise in the hands of somebody who is from Baltimore and and cares about the city and cares about this area and wants to see the team here, that is an important factor as well for people. Andy, what can you tell us just to recap about what the status of the sale is, what needs to be accomplished over the next week before the owners' meetings, before the owners, meet and try to decide if they're going to approve this, and how close, essentially, to finalization is this sale to David Rubenstein and company?
Paul, I'm going to disregard every question you just asked and make one last point about before I go to
Please do. About your ham sandwich? Turkey.
turkey sandwich, please. What I just would like to, remind fans is that tomorrow you're not going to, now that I say this, it's going to happen, but tomorrow you're not going to wake up to a Rushman extension of 10 years, 700 million. I mean, that's, these things take time. And you also have to remember that, it takes, John Angelos would have loved to extend some of these guys too. It just, maybe the price point wasn't exactly where they were willing to, or, Gunnar Henderson, for instance, was a Scott Boras client, is a Scott Boras client. And you have to remember that Scott Boris's general policy is that rather than signing before you hit free agency, you see what the open market brings. It's the player's right to test the open market. So I would just have that in your head that this is not an instant like bang, everyone's going to sign a new contract tomorrow. These things do take time. But going to what your actual question was. Sorry for the sidetrack.
You're good.
Was basically, yeah, we don't really know exactly the timetable. We're going to learn probably a lot more in the next coming days. There is the annual owners meeting next week, which this could be on the docket for that. They'd have to approve it. They'd have to approve the sale. MLB owners have to approve it. So yeah, I mean, it's not technically all wrapped up yet, and there's still a lot of hurdles probably to go through that needs to get done. But the fact that it's an agreement, is a good thing. Although, we've seen agreements with the O's before, so let's not have one of those.
Yeah, true. There was a lot of lease drama. Feels like not too long ago, about a month and a half ago. Things we thought were finalized were not finalized. So, like you said off the top, Andy, we are preaching patience at this point. Back to the future of this team quickly. I want to bring up one point, which is not just the future of the Orioles payroll going forward, but also the potential for an all-star game to come back to Camden Yards in the near future. We haven't seen the Orioles host the all-star game really since Camden Yards opened in about 3 decades. Maybe a potential sale of the Orioles to a group led by David Rubenstein and Orioles legend Cal Ripken Jr. could be the impetus for bringing the all-star game back to Charm City and back to a packed, sold out, rocking Camden Yards. And I think that's something that Orioles fans have to get excited about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that wasn't going to happen at least until they had the lease, no matter what. So,
Certainly.
the lease is done. They're in Baltimore. A new ownership can't change that. So, logically, that would be the next step. I mean, I believe the next 3 All-Star games are already assigned, but it's a big deal to get a game in town. It takes a lot of work to, work on your bid and get it all worked out. But Camden Yards is definitely due for one, and it should only help push them ahead of the track.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'm also interested to see what new ownership has in terms of plans for renovations. I mean, it's just not something we've heard a lot about. I mean, we know that Camden Yards can use sprucing up. We know the sound system could use sprucing up. We know, certain amenities.
Video boards. Yeah.
Yeah, the video board, a source of contention for many decades. But yeah, I mean, there's $600 billion in public bond money approved for these renovations. I mean, we've seen from the Ravens, who got the same amount, the same resources. They've had blueprints. They've talked a lot about what they're going to do. We have not seen things along the lines of that level of finality with the Orioles. So it's sort of like, hey, what's the plan here? I mean, they've been kind of consumed with the talk about the development rights and property around the stadium. Well, what is going to happen with the stadium? And to Danielle's point, if you want the All-Star game, which is a great, I think would be a great source of civic pride, hasn't happened since the 90s here in Baltimore. You got to spruce up the stadium and make it more modern. Even though Camden Yards has great bones, we all know it can be improved.
Absolutely. And we saw across the street from Camden Yards, M&T Bank Stadium, that team in the Baltimore Ravens just announced, a brand new wave of renovations. What are they going to do with the $600 million that they are being promised by the state? What are they going to plan? Well, they have a concert venue planned. They have concourse renovations planned. They have sound system renovations planned. They're going to be changing things. They revealed plans. They revealed, everything but a blueprint, essentially, for what they're going to do for M&T Bank Stadium. We haven't seen that yet for Camden Yards. And like you said, Kyle, there are areas that the team can certainly improve the ballpark. That is still one of the best in all of sports, but there are certain areas that it has fallen behind. That's something that the current ownership group in John Angelos has acknowledged, that the governor in Westmore has acknowledged. There are places that Camden Yards can improve upon and can get better. It's also going to be fascinating to see how a new ownership group could work with Maryland Governor Wes Moore, because we knew that John Angelos, at least until the lease was signed, and after the announcement of the lease, Wes Moore was there. Several state officials were there. The Oriole Bird was there. John Angelos was not there. But everything prior to that, we knew that John Angelos and Wes Moore were at least said to be in lockstep, that they had a close relationship. John Angelos was a large part of Wes Moore's book before he became governor. These two were close. How would go ahead, Kyle?
Well, I'm just saying, politically, a sporting team is very popular to get behind. And I think, honestly, Wes Moore kind of showed he would move heaven and earth for John in many ways. I mean, went down to Atlanta. Andy was there when they went down to Atlanta together. Doing all this rigmarole of showing how great friends they were before they actually had to sit down at the negotiating table and kind of figure out a deal that worked well, not just for the Orioles, but for the state. So I think you have a political system that's ready to play ball with ownership. And obviously the state funding is there, as we talked about. So I think it's a big opportunity for a new owner. I mean, the development rights, as we've talked about, are still on the table to kind of figure out. And that can be profitable for a new owner. But I think it also has to make sense for the community. And there's just a lot more work to be done to develop a plan on how to make that useful, not just to a new owner, but to the community surrounding the ballpark.
Right. And David Rubenstein. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on. I think it's also a really fascinating thing for a new ownership group is what happens to MASN, because if you look around the league and really with every sport, these regional sports networks are having a lot of difficulties, and some are bankrupt. So the fact that MASN is team owned and is profitable is a huge leg up compared to what some teams. I mean, think of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Their Diamond Sports Group has just been bought by. There's so much uncertainty. I believe Amazon just bought the Diamond Sports Group, and for a while fans couldn't see their home team play on TV, and it just was because of bankruptcy. It just was, there's a lot of issues with RSNs right now, and the fact that MASN is, maybe it's not thriving because I don't know if any cable package is, but the fact that it's still seemingly doing okay is a leg up over some teams. So it'll be interesting to see just if they decide to shift it in some way, if they can find a solution to this Nationals conundrum that has gripped baseball since the Nationals moved here in 2005. There's a lot of consider about the broadcast side too.
And if they're still actually investing more in MASN or, using the funds available there. I mean, the Orioles, I think we said they only broadcast 7 spring training games this year, which for a team that actually owns their RSN network is not a lot. And their broadcasters don't typically actually go down to the games to broadcast them from Sarasota. They do it from the warehouse usually. So there's a lot of investments they can make there. Their staff has decreased significantly in the past few years under John Angelos. So there's a lot of things that they can do with MASN, not having to worry about, bankruptcy or going through another company. They have all the rights to their games. They have every power to go and improve their broadcast and make it more accessible to people.
Right. Now, David Rubenstein is still somewhat of an unknown, but Danielle wrote an article back when there were rumblings that he would be interested in buying the team. What can you tell us, Danielle, about the billionaire and the Baltimore native and what he could be like as a potential owner?
Yeah, so David is a Baltimore native. He grew up playing Little League around town. He made his fortune with the Carlyle Group, which is a private equity investment firm. And that group, it hasn't been without their controversy. They were involved in some weapon funding and some other things along the way. But he is, always giving back to his local community. He's been a big philanthropist, particularly in the DC area, more so in the Baltimore area. He's donated to the zoo to bring the panda. He served on the Kennedy Center board, which he actually stepped down yesterday. Perhaps, preluding, knowing that today the news was going to come out that he was going to buy the Orioles and he wouldn't have time to still serve on the Kennedy Center board. But he's given millions upon millions to the DC area and other charities along the way. He's also, a ginormous history buff. He's written 4 books. He's hosted live TV shows for Bloomberg. So he has done a lot in the community and nationally as well.
Can we just speculate if maybe David Rubenstein quit the Kennedy Center board because he knew that it would reflect on them as soon as he was chugging from the Homer hose? He knew he couldn't do both. The Homer hose and the Kennedy Center board can't live in both worlds at the same time.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe, but he is on it for another year while they search for his replacement. So I don't know if that ruins your point or not.
Your seriousness of my joke is well taken, Danielle.
It's hard to process sarcasm while doing breaking news, Kyle. Okay.
In fact, I think for it to be final, the owners have to approve and everything, but I think he has to drink from the Homer hose in order for the sale to be final. Isn't that a stipulation there, Andy? I caught you with your mouth full of a sandwich.
Yeah, he has to drink from the Homer hose and take a bite of one of Andy's turkey sandwiches. That's final.
Exactly. Oh boy. Now Andy's bringing in his foster dog, so this is really going off the rails. I do want to get a couple quick comments and questions in here as well as we try to react to this. A question from Chad. Where does this leave the minority owner groups, such as Barry Levinson and the Clancy Group? How that is going to be worked out is going to be fascinating because we are really talking about John Angelos as the majority owner and that Angelos family as having the majority stake in the team. But what would even happen with the minority group, and would this even affect that group, Andy? Do you think?
I mean, it might. We'll see. I mean, I don't know, but technically, it would probably eventually have clauses in there to buy people out. But that is something we will learn more the next coming days. I don't know if Danielle has more to shed from her knowledge, but I would imagine that there would be. When Rubenstein's stake increases, minority stakes would decrease, and some may decide to sell their entire stake. But that I don't know. I don't know the official answer.
Yeah.
We honestly don't have any answers to that question yet. We just know that there are at least other minority owners joining, as we have mentioned, but we don't know what's happening to the existing minority owners.
Yeah. Another question from Steve. Will the team be run similarly until a full sale, perhaps years from now? That's another question we can't answer right now. We just don't know. We don't know exactly what the future is going to look like.
We do not know what Peter Angelos' condition is. We know it's not great, but I mean, that's obviously a very private, fiercely guarded secret of the family, and so much has to happen with Peter before the full sale, the majority stake sale.
Right. And I saw a comment from Noah about will they be able to spend more money immediately once the move is finalized. Andy addressed that off the top, but yeah, I mean, preach patience because there's a lot that is yet to be determined here. And like you said, Andy, people are not going to wake up tomorrow morning and Gunnar Henderson's going to be signed for 15 years. It's going to take a while for this to go through before David Rubenstein and everybody else can come in and change things up.
If it does happen, that would be quite a morning present for everybody.
That really would.
I would ask the Orioles to let us sleep sometime if they don't mind. Maybe give us a couple days before we move on to the next major news.
Yeah, between the Ravens season ending, Kyle and I thought we might get a couple days off before spring training, but no, it's why would we think that? Guys, do you have any final thoughts? Does Andy's foster dog have any final woofs, any barks before we sign off here?
She was barking earlier, but now she knows she's on air, so she's got to act. This dog is available at Barks Animal Shelter, so go to Barks and look at their dogs. Yeah, this is Sandy Cheeks. Check her out.
How about we pump our own channel here, Andy? We plug our own stuff. The BaltimoreBanner.com is where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months, which is a just ridiculously low price to pay for such great journalism of Andy's and Danielle's and Kyle's and everybody else that the Baltimore Banner employs. And thank you, Danielle. And everybody else that the Baltimore Banner employs. And of course, please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. This is not the only breaking news live chat that we have. We have been doing Orioles live chats every week throughout the offseason. I'm sure those will continue, in fact, increase as the season gets underway. Spring training is a mere 2 weeks away, so we have so much to cover, to write about, to talk about over the coming weeks as we get ready for pitchers and catchers in Sarasota on Valentine's Day. Kyle, you are at Kyle Goon on Twitter.
That's
Danielle
right.
is at D_Allentuck. Andy is at AF Kostka. I am at Paul Mancano. That's the one I struggle with. And at All Banner Sports. For Kyle, for Danielle, for Andy, please go read our coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com. I'm Paul. Thanks so much for tuning in.